My name is Jessica Ping Wild. I am 24 years old and I am an American living in London. I was born actually with a very rare condition. It's called child syndrome and it affects about 60 people worldwide. So there's not a whole lot known about it, but what is known is that it causes limb and skin deficiencies on one side of the body in primarily females. Actually, most males that are born with the condition pass away. So it's kind of like a really serious condition, and sometimes it can affect the organs too, but I'm very lucky because there's no indication that that is something that actually is something that's going to affect my life. Some of the biggest hurdles I've faced has been, in general, just people's attitudes towards disability. Growing up, it was always really hard kind of being the kid that couldn't always participate, or being the kid that was made fun of because they were different or left out, was not included in friend groups, that type of thing. I feel like there's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of beliefs about what people with disabilities can actually accomplish and what they should be able to do. And ultimately that has held me back more than anything that I've ever had, any mindset, any physical hurdle. That said, of course, there are plenty of physical hurdles that are very problematic. Not having a ramp, not having an elevator, not having X, Y, and Z in place so that I can get up to the same space as everybody else and participate. This was really difficult for me as a kid in particular, feeling like I was the lone sheep that was left out of things, both from a friendship perspective, people not wanting to be my friend and making fun of me because of my condition, but also not being able to physically participate in everything and feel included in that respect either. But mostly those later years, I just really struggled to accept the fact that I was this way. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll never get married. Nobody will ever love me. I remember thinking, oh, I have this really great friend group now, but what happens when we graduate high school? What happens when we graduate college? Are we going to stay friends? And if we don't, when I move on, am I going to be able to find a job because of this? Because it's been so hard to make friends and find lovers and all of that type of thing. Surely employment's going to be the same way, and it is. But I think generally speaking, that was really hard for me, and it made it even more difficult for me to feel confident in my own skin and feel like I had any value to give, because at that point, if I'm questioning how every single person is going to receive me, I'm putting so much value in their opinions that I can't have any left for myself. A lot of my biggest problems really revolve around simply going about my day-to-day life. So a lot of the world is accessible. A lot of changes and a lot of technology exists, but there's still a lot of problems as well. I live in London. London is this very modern, very culturally diverse city. It's great, it's wonderful, but it's not the greatest for accessibility. There are so many shops that I physically cannot get into. There's so many restaurants that I physically cannot get into. I have had to call restaurants in the past. I've had to call shops in the past. I've had to call doctor's offices, dentist offices, things that you would think would be inclusive of everyone. That's a regular hurdle of my day-to-day life, just needing to plan so much in advance, whereas most people could just leave the apartment and go. And that's just not a reality for me. The same with public transportation. I have to always take such a roundabout way of getting anywhere. For example, today I had to get across town and I ended up taking a bus because at the end of the day, if I wanted to take the tube or if I wanted to take the train, most tube stations in London are not accessible. I would have to take a very particular route, and I could have done it, but it would have left me very vulnerable. I would have had to be very careful about what stations I was getting off at. And I do that sometimes. Sometimes it's worth the risk because sometimes it saves enough time where it's like, okay, we're gonna try it today. But with certain things, I'm not gonna risk it. And I shouldn't have to risk it. It's 2021, technology exists, space exists, but we're just not prioritizing these changes that need to happen. If we just start educating and having better representation. Because at the end of the day, we can't get better access until people are aware that there's a problem. We can't get better laws. We can't get more representation until people are aware that it's a problem. And that is really where it stems from, is an awareness, and people's attitudes changing through that awareness is what ultimately needs to happen. Because disability, everybody is impacted by disability in one way or another, whether it be through a family member, whether it be through an injury. Temporary disability matters too. Sickness, people can get sick. That can lead to a chronic illness, which is a disability. You don't have to be missing an arm and a leg like me to be considered disabled. There's so many different levels to what that means. And so understanding, being willing to talk about and be vulnerable and empathize, I think, with these different voices, with these different conditions, and with these different needs is what ultimately really needs to happen more than anything else. Because until we have a widespread understanding of each other, we cannot move forward with policy. We cannot move forward with anything else. There are so many changes that need to happen in terms of infrastructure in London and in cities around the world, and to be quite honest, in smaller towns as well. But generally speaking, some of the biggest things that need immediate amendments would be transportation. Transportation is necessary in order to live your life anywhere. Public transportation should be fully accessible. We can do better, we should do better, and we should be prioritizing doing better. Additionally, any form of medical office, any form of educational building, any form of, honestly, space of consumerism should also be accessible. Same reasonings. We are consumers, we are students, we are employees, we are important, we matter. I think that would be the biggest thing that I would recommend changing first, would be making sure these base things, these very important, necessary parts of life and function are accessible. So I have a blog, it's called The Rolling Explorer, and honestly, it has been such an important part of my self-love journey, because through it, I do a lot of disability education. I do a lot of disability advocacy work, but in educating, in telling my story, in sharing my experiences, I'm also validating that. I'm also saying, hi, I am who I am and I'm proud of it. I am putting out content, I am putting out words and videos and pictures and all of these things that exude positivity and joy, but also get really real and get really vulnerable, because at the end of the day, we're all multi-dimensional people, including people with disabilities. And I think breaking down the stereotypes that we fit into a certain bag because of our ability level is so important. It's something that I am really, really passionate about, and that's something that since I started the blog 2 years ago now, I have felt such a calling to really do that and to really put my all into it, just based on my previous life experiences, my continued life experiences, and the life experiences of literally a billion other people. I am Jessica Pingwild, and this is my voice.